Hi, welcome to the second of our cooking shows at the canteen. This one we're going to try and show you how to make gnocchi, and we're going to do two types of gnocchi. We're going to do a gluten-free gnocchi and we're going to do a vegan gnocchi. Now the reason that we're showing you gnocchi is that one, it's quite difficult to say properly, but two, it's difficult to make. A standard recipe that you may see in a cookery book or online will tell you to take about a kilogram of potatoes, a couple, maybe 3 eggs, and about 300 grams of flour. But the amount of flour depends upon how floury the potatoes are, how wet the potatoes are. And from past experience I can tell you that we have had massive problems making gnocchi. Now what we've got in here is we've got about 1.5 kilos of potatoes that we've boiled and just left to cool down. Now my favourite way of making gnocchi is to actually bake the potatoes first. You get a much fluffier mash, but really any mashed potato would do. I wouldn't suggest that you use smash for this recipe. It's probably a disaster waiting to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to mash these potatoes, and to mash potatoes we've got a very nice potato ricer. This is just a Kenwood sort of chef, and it's got a potato ricer attached to it. It makes mashing potatoes easy, and that's one of the horrible things about making gnocchi. So to mash these potatoes up, it really is as simple as just letting the ricer drag the potato up and through and turn it all into a lovely mash. Now I'll just continue with this. I can already see that this potato is what I would suggest is a little bit gluey, and that's going to mean that you're going to need more flour, but not too much flour. If you use too much flour, it's going to go really hard and sticky. So what we'll do is we'll just mash these through, and that is the first thing you can do. Now you can see from that we've got quite a decent mash. Take the potato off there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the gnocchi, so I'll just pop that over to the wash basin. Use my mash, all pretty nicely mashed up. And what I'll do is I'll split this into two. So I'm going to put 700 grams into one bowl and 700 grams into another. So roughly take our mash and pop it into the bowl. In fact, I think I'll probably take a little bit more out of there for the vegan one, and just use 1 egg for the gluten-free gnocchi. So we put that to one side now. That'll be the vegan one, and I'll make the gnocchi. Now if I can come a little bit closer to the camera, you can see that this is a decent mash. There's not any lumps in it, but it's a little bit on the wet side. It's not really what you'd call a fluffy potato. Okay, so I'm going to deal with that. That's quite easy to deal with. You can make a gnocchi out of any potatoes. On the last menu we made gnocchi, we boiled the potatoes in the skin, and they were absolutely awful to mash. We broke one of our attachments, ripped the ball off the end, had to mash it by hand. It was like dealing with glue, but we persevered, and one of the customers actually said that it was one of the nicest gnocchi that they'd ever tasted, which I found a little bit bizarre, but I'm sure he was right. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 egg, and we're going to crack the egg into the gnocchi, or into the potato mixture, and using an egg is something you can do. It helps the whole gnocchi mixture to set. So now I've got about 400 grams of potatoes in there, I think. 1 egg is plenty for that, and I'll just mix that through, and that's basically the start of my gnocchi. Now I'm not going to give you any directions about how much flour to use. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and show you by doing that when we add the flour we'll get to a certain texture which will be perfect for gnocchi. So what I've got here now is I've got some Dove's Farm gluten-free plain white flour blend, which is a mix of potato flour, tapioca starch, rice flour, and possibly a little bit of buckwheat, and a little bit of buckwheat. In fact, and a little bit of maize, a little bit of corn flour as well. So what we're going to do is we just pop that in there. Now, I usually play by hand. I have no idea how much that is. It may be about 100 grams. So we'll start off and we'll just mix, whoa there, a little bit over the floor. We'll mix that into the potato mix. Now then, I'll show you this once it's coming, and I'm not going to make a mess all over the floor. And you can see now that this is starting to look a little bit like a dough. Right, now the way that I would check to see whether or not I can actually use this is by feel. Take some. It feels a little bit too soft to me, okay? You can see this, if I bring it a little bit closer, it's just actually sticking a little bit to my fingers. Okay, you want it a little bit, what's the word, drier than that, right? So I'll just quickly go and wash my hands, be back in a second. Okay, hands all washed, back to it. I'm only going to add another about 50 grams of flour to that. It'll make about 150 grams altogether. Like I said, don't weigh it out. If you weigh it out, the best thing to do is to add as you go, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. If you go with the recipes and add 300 grams of flour, you could find you've got way too much flour in there, and it's not going to give you a light and fluffy gnocchi. Okay, so let's mix that in, and what I'm going to do then is I'm probably going to pop that out onto my surface. Okay, so that now feels quite nice. It feels like a gnocchi dough. So I'll just flour the surface a little bit, and we'll take the dough and we'll throw that onto the board. Now the nice thing about this is if you've got a little bit of mashed potato left, then you're only literally minutes away from having a delicious Italian main course or starter. Now just bring that dough together like so, and then I'm in a position where I can actually start to roll that out. Okay, so I'll take one of my favourite knives for this job, which is this red one. We'll take a little bit, pop that to one side. We'll probably eat that later on, maybe, or more than likely throw it in the bin actually, but we'll see. Right, take the dough between your hands and roll it quite nicely. You can see it's come into a ball. You can see that it's not sticking to my hands at all. Okay, so it comes into a nice ball onto the floured surface, and roll your cigar out. So you need the flour here, just a tiny little bit of flour, and very gently I'm rolling that. My fingers are very gently just touching it, literally caressing the dough, and I've rolled that into a nice long sausage shape. Once you've done that, take your knife and cut it into the gnocchi. I'll do this quite quickly, and that's your gnocchi. Now what we tend to do in the restaurant is we tend to just take the excess flour, give them a quick roll in the excess flour, and there's your gnocchi. Now you can do anything with these. What we tend to do, because I'm very lazy, is just put an indentation with thumb and middle finger into both sides, so that you've got a little pocket that's going to pick up the sauce. Alternatively, one of the cool things to do is that you take your fork, and if you want to make some ridges in there, just take a gnocchi with a fork in the hand, just give it a quick roll like that, and that gives you the solid gnocchi you can buy in Tesco's. Okay, did you get that, Leanne? Go back to this. Okay, lovely. So there's your gnocchi with the little ridges in. That's nice. Again, catches the sauce. On the last menu, all we did is we took the gnocchi, which were in that sort of shape, we threw them straight into the pan. The nice thing about that is what we tend to do at the restaurant when we poach the gnocchi prior to service, and then for service we fry them either in a little bit of olive oil or in some butter. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get the kettle boiled and we're going to poach these off. Okay, so if you can cut it there, Leanne. And so, we've got the gnocchi ready, we've got some water bubbling away here. What we're going to do is we're just going to transfer the gnocchi from the board or from the table into the water. We're going to poach them for a couple of minutes and then that's going to be our gnocchi. Right, so what we're going to do is just take the gnocchi that we made, pop them onto a plate, straight into the water, give them a little shake to stop them from sticking, and that is the gnocchi. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to wait until these have had about a minute, maybe 2 minutes in there. They're going to float up to the surface and Leanne will show you them floating on the surface. I'm going to check them then for doneness. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one out, we're going to give it a little press. If it feels nice and set in the middle, we're going to place them onto this greaseproof paper and we're going to let them just cool down there, and later on what we'll do is we'll show you how to recook them. And what I'll do is I've got a little bit of brown butter left over from the last menu in the fridge. I'll get some brown butter out, we'll put them into a frying pan and we'll fry them off in a little bit of brown butter with a little bit of lemon juice and maybe some poppy seeds and a little bit of vegetarian Parmesan cheese, and it'll be absolutely delicious. Now for those of you who, I don't know why I'm messing with this, but for those of you who are interested in vegetarian Parmesan, it's quite expensive, it's much more expensive than Parmesan. The best place to buy it is Sainsbury's, and it's their hard cheese, their vegetarian hard cheese, and it is absolutely delicious. Right, you can see now that these have started to float to the surface, so Leanne's going to just give you a little view of that. How do they look, Lee? Okay, nice, thanks. There was a thumbs up from Leanne there. She won't speak on the camera. So let's just take a little look. Now they float to the surface. I'm going to give them a little press, and those are lovely. They're absolutely delicious. They've got a nice and set in the centre. So all we're going to do with these now is we're going to, with a slotted spoon, we're going to take them out. They're all cooked, and we're going to pop them onto our greaseproof paper. You can see there the delicious ridged gnocchi, which is going to be beautiful to pick up a little bit of tomato sauce. Not that we're going to do any tomato sauce, because we're going to fry them in butter, as I said. Okay, and that is how we make gluten-free gnocchi. Now, you know, I didn't really eat many of these myself. I was told that they were delicious, and I'm happy to believe that they were. Right, if we just finish there, then we'll come back and we'll do the vegan gnocchi in exactly the same way. Okay, welcome back. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the vegan gnocchi, and to do the vegan gnocchi we're going to need two things. The first thing that we use to do vegan gnocchi is potato flour. That gives us a nice starch, and it gives us a nice set, and it's kind of what we use as the egg substitute here. The second thing we're going to use is just ordinary plain flour. So what I will do here, I've got about 600-700 grams, maybe 800 grams of potato in there. So I'll just add probably the equivalent of about 4 tablespoons of potato flour. That's the first thing that I do. Okay, so I take the potato flour and just give that a quick mix through, making sure that I've knocked out any lumps in the potato flour, the potato starch. Right, so we mix that through, same way we would have mixed the eggs. You can see that that's still quite gloopy. Certainly not the best potato for gnocchi, but it'll do. Now we'll take some flour, and I've started off here. There's probably about 150 grams of flour gone in there. Okay, so I'll work that in, and we'll see where we get to. Now you can have, sometimes, in the past we've had some problems with these, with the set on them, but usually I find these no more difficult to make than a standard gnocchi that's made with eggs. I did once see the MasterChef people actually make people make that doesn't make sense, but make people make gnocchi with some pasta, some fresh pasta, which they had to work some mashed potato in. Seemed like an awfully backwards way of doing it. I think if I was on that, I would have started all over again. Now you can see this has changed texture. In fact, if you look at it, you can see that maybe the gluten started to work in the flour. I'll have a little press again, and again I can see that if you just look at that on my fingers, you can see it's just sticking to my fingers again, and so that's going to need a little bit more flour. I'll wash my hands again and come back and put that little bit of flour in there and roll out the gnocchi. So we're going to have about 50 grams more flour, maybe 75 grams more flour. That's gone in, and I'm just going to mix this through now. You'll see this change completely as this flour goes in. You'll see that it becomes much more doughy. So again, just mixing it through with the fork, you can see that now is starting to resemble a gnocchi dough. So what I'll do is I'll flour the surface again, and this time what we'll do is we'll just work it on the surface for a minute or so, just turning it into a nice ball, and then I'll roll out my gnocchi in exactly the same way that I rolled out the gnocchi for the gluten-free version. Okay, that's in a nice ball now. I can pretty much roll that in any way that I want. It's nice and soft, which means that the gnocchi aren't going to be too hard, and when we refry them, they're going to give a really nice a nice soft melting centre. So what I'll do this time, we'll use the blue knife, take off our first bit of dough. You can see there that's come together quite nicely, and I will roll that out. So using the remainder of the flour that's on the board, first off exactly the same, roll it into my hand so it forms into a nice dough, and then onto the board, pick up a little bit of flour and very gently just roll that out into a nice sausage of gnocchi. Just a tiny little bit more flour, that was more than a tiny little bit more flour, onto the surface, and there's my gnocchi. So again, count 1, 2, I can't stop myself counting whenever I do it. I always cut from the right hand side for some reason. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 cuts makes 14 gnocchi, plus the 4 we've got 18 gnocchi there. They're nice and soft, they're nice and easy to handle. Again, we could take the fork if we wanted to take the fork, if we wanted to do this the cool way, and you can draw and maybe put a few ridges in there, or again, easy, press with thumb and middle finger, and we can just make a little indentation. Right, I'm just going to get a plate. And here we go, we take our gnocchi again off the surface. Okay, they're all nice and individual. Into the water, just pop that up a little bit. And again, exactly the same, we're looking for exactly the same thing. We're going to wait until they come to the surface, and then we're going to check to make sure that all of the gnocchi are set, and then we'll pop them onto our greaseproof paper, and we'll deal with those again. Right, I just need to go and wash my hands again, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, and so we're back again now. The gnocchi's just starting to poach. You can see, if Leanne just comes in a little closer, you can see that they've started to move off the bottom. They're starting to float. That's an indication that they're done. I'll just check that by taking one of the bigger gnocchi, taking it out and giving it a press. Now when I press that, you can see that that is pretty much done. So we'll just give that an extra 30 seconds. Always do that with our vegan gnocchi, just give it an extra 30 seconds. And then we'll pop them on here and we'll let them cool down for 5 minutes, and we'll come back down and we'll show you how to do these in a nice way. Now with these ones, what we could do is we can make a nice tomato sauce. We've actually got a nice tomato sauce on the menu at the moment. And so what I shall do for Leanne is I'll make some gnocchi for her. She can have gnocchi with tomato sauce, and I'll have those gnocchi with a little bit of brown butter and some poppy seeds. Okay, so I'll take these out now. We'll go away and have a little break for a couple of minutes, let them cool down so that they're all nice, and we'll come back down and we'll just fry those off in a little bit of butter. Okay, see you in 5. Okay, so we've been away for a little break. Our gnocchi's nice and cool now, nice and set as well, so you can see that, you know, there's no gluiness in the middle of that. We've got a lovely set thing. In this jug here, what we've got is we've got a little bit of beurre noisette, a little bit of brown butter, and we might do a little brown butter on you one day as well, because again, that's something that people can be a little bit afraid of making. Very, very simple. So what we're going to do, we've got a nicely medium heat pan here. We'll chuck a little bit of the brown butter in, and we'll add just a tiny amount of olive oil as well. Okay, so we'll just get that nice and warm. I'll just pop that heat up a tiny little bit, and then all that we do is we take our gnocchi, and this is the way that we would serve them, and this is exactly the way that we served them in the restaurant on the last menu. We'll take our gnocchi. For a starter portion, you're looking for about 11, maybe 12 gnocchi. For a main course, it's not far off what I've got in the pan here. So what we've got is we've got our gnocchi there now, which are going to fry in the brown butter. That's going to give it a really, really nice nutty flavour. A little bit of olive oil to stop that from burning. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let those colour on one side. Just pick one up and have a look at it, try not to burn my hands. You can see there it's starting to colour on the one side. So what we'll do is I'll grab a little palette knife and then spin those over. Leanne, you can carry on looking at those cooking. I've got my palette knife now, and so what we tend to do in the restaurant is make sure that you've got a nice crispy side on two sides of the gnocchi. So I'll just spin those over. You can see they've got a nice little colour on them. The butter is going to give them a wonderful richness, and the oil is going to help to give them a nice crunchy exterior. So let's just pop all of those over. This can be a little bit of a pain in the neck, especially if you don't get them over quickly enough. You can end up losing one or two gnocchi to the bin or to the chef's mouth, depending on who's the hungrier at the time, or should I say hungrier at the time. Okay, so we've got our gnocchi there now. That's really nice. We couldn't find any poppy seeds, so we can't put any poppy seeds on there. But we found a lemon, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let that sit there for another 30 seconds or so until the other side has got a nice little crust on it, and that's just starting to happen right now. Now we haven't seasoned these. The potatoes were seasoned when they were cooked, so there's plenty of salt in the water. And what we're going to do now to finish this off, very, very simply, take take a lemon. There's 2 lemons in here now, me and the lemon, and we're going to just squeeze a little bit of lemon juice into the sauce, and we're going to give that a little bit of a fry. You can see that lemon then is going to make a really, really lovely lemony buttery sauce. I'll just grab a bowl from the plate warmer, and that is our gnocchi in brown butter with lemon juice, and you can see they've got a nice little crust on them. We'll take those out. There's the one with the ridges. That'd be great with tomato sauce. I'm not going to get it this time. We'll pop those into the bowl. Now you can dry these on a bit of paper if you're worried about too much oil. I'm really not that worried about oil at all. There's our gnocchi. Knock the heat off. Give it another quick squeeze of lemon just for a little bit of freshness at the end. I've got a little bit of grated parmesan in here, so we're going to pop that over there, And I've been told that I've given Sainsbury's too much of a shout out. You can also buy vegetarian parmesan at any major supermarket. You can buy it in Waitrose, Tesco's, but it's much more expensive, so you'd be a fool to do it. Go to Sainsbury's and buy it in Sainsbury's. That's our gnocchi in brown butter with lemon and some parmesan. I'm just going to go and get a spoon. Leanne's going to carry on looking at the bowl. Leanne didn't actually carry on looking at the bowl, so I'm just going to taste these now, and I'm going to tell you that beautiful crispy outside, very soft in the centre, beautiful flavour of lemon juice. Sorry, I'm talking in my mouthful here. Absolutely delicious, absolutely delicious. Thank you.